Hi guys, welcome to Purple Corner. How are you doing? Today's video is a bit longer than usual because I'll be making an animation for my YouTube Shorts outro. So if you enjoy, please make sure to leave a like and let's get into it. Before we start, I just want to say sorry for my voice being a bit raspy. I'm actually quite sick, but I don't feel like putting off the video any longer, so I'll just try my best. So first what I'm doing is tracing my original profile picture to get the basic composition of the face. I'm trying to use some basic shapes like triangles, circles, dots and lines just to get the general shape, the position of the eyes, mouth and ears. I can add further detail later. Once I have the basic sketch, I will retrace it once more so I can start copying it and repositioning it around the circle. I make a bunch of copies and I scatter them around based on the movement. You can see that the gaps where the movement should be faster are bigger than the gaps between the slower movement. So once the character slows down, the distance between the frames is smaller. I'm just adjusting it so it's as smooth as possible and erasing the parts that won't be visible in the circle. You can see that I'm using Adobe Photoshop to draw my frames, and then later I edit them in Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm drawing on my Wacom Cintiq tablet, but if you feel like getting into animation, you really don't need it. I've been animating on my mobile phone for past 5 years and only got the tablet last year. So here's the first sketch. You can see it's kind of wonky, but it helps you with the general placement of the frames. Next, I start adding a second sketch with further details, where I start using this squish and stretch method. This was commonly used, for example, by Disney Studios back then when they made 2D movies and not live actions. When the character is moving relatively fast, you just outstretch the face or the features to make the animation smoother without using more frames. And then once again, once the character slows down, you just kind of squish him around. For example, when the character touches floor, they usually just get kind of squished. I try to keep the proportions of the face really same, so it's always the same mass. Also, the ears are going the opposite direction than the head, so the movement is more exaggerated, and also because gravity, I guess. Once the head comes to a full stop, I just add some frames to the ears so they have sort of secondary animation. They keep moving even though the head is static. If you also wonder why I'm kind of jumping around with the frames and then not doing one by the other, it's because at first I start by making some keyframes, which are basically the most important frames of the animation where there are the biggest visible changes. Like, for example, the static picture, the part where she blinks, and also the part where she's the most outstretched. And then I can finish up with the filler in between frames. Then I can just sort of lower the opacity and show both of the key layers and sort of draw in between to make the transition frame. And here we have the second part. You can see it already looks much smoother, although I didn't add any frames. Next is the last sketch of the head, which adds more details, like for example the eyebrows, the hair, the eyelashes, ear detail, and so on. This sketch will work as the final reference for the line art, so it's good to add more details so you don't have to improvise while line arting. By the way, this kitty doesn't really have a name yet. I didn't think of it that far. So if you have any name suggestions for her, please let me know down in the comments. Once again, I'm doing the keyframes first, and I'm also trying to add the animation to the hair, so it also follows the gravity and has some secondary animation. The reason why I'm actually making this animation is because I wanted to start making some Instagram reels and some YouTube shorts, but I wanted to have some cute outro to actually show that I do make animations, and I felt bad for just putting the static picture like my profile picture. So I decided it would be a cute addition to make her slightly animated. It's just a 2-second animation to kind of showcase my abilities, I guess. The sketches alone took 2 hours to complete, which is probably the easiest part of the animation, since you don't have to try so hard, you can have really messy work and clean it up later. Here I'm making the static picture, but instead of making a whole new frame, I just copied and added the parts that will be moving, like the ears and the fur. The face will be static, so I can just copy it and use it for later. Finally, I realized that I can actually zoom in to do some of the details. So far, I didn't use the zoom much, but the more I get into the details, the more I'll use zooming in and rotating the canvas around. I was kind of struggling with the head tilt part because I kept feeling like the eyes were kind of weird. So I just kept repositioning the eyes to make them feel symmetrical. But in the end, I still wasn't quite happy with it. But it was a small detail, and since each frame is on screen for like 0.2 seconds, it's not that important of a detail in the final version. You can see me switching between the different frames to make sure that the position of the fur is correct. I finished up with the first frames last because I felt like they needed the least detail and they took the shortest. I wanted to get over with the complicated part first. Here's the final part where you can see that the fur adds most detail and the animation looks much smoother with the secondary motion of the fur. Next, I decided it's time to do some line art, so I started by making the white circle, and I divided into two parts. The lower part where the circle would overlap with the kitty, and the upper part which will be below the animation. I made this decision overnight because I figured it's almost like this sort of Looney Tunes style, so it would give the animation more life if the cat just slightly peeked out of the circle, like she's not just framed in it. Here you can see me doing the line art and in fact making many attempts. I had to keep telling myself that it doesn't need to be perfect. Perfection is really just a human-made concept and it's never quite possible. Plus with animation, since as I said, each frame is on the screen only less than a second, it won't be really that visible in the final cut. But it's just this sort of perfectionist sickness while inking to make each line completely perfect, and you just keep hitting Ctrl Z, or for me, it's already a shortcut on my stylus until the line is simply perfect. I think this would be easier for me if I just used mirroring to kind of make the both halves of the face the same, but I thought it would look more natural if I just draw each side freehand. I just kept looking back and forth at the eyes and the eyelashes, so they look at least slightly similar. I really had to cut up this process because inking was probably what took the longest. This is just the head without the headphones and the body, and it took 2 hours. I also added some details that weren't in the previous sketch, like for the eyes. I tried to make it as similar as my profile picture, where the pupil is separate. I can tell you that maybe on the mobile phone sometimes it can be even easier to animate as you're working with a smaller screen, and I actually had a hard time getting used to the tablet as it is a large screen and it can be quite a strain on the arm and hand. You can see me working around a lot with the zoom and the different rotations to find the best position for each line. Not to mention, when you're inking, You need to make fast and precise movements so that the line seems as clean as possible without too many interruptions. But you can see that by preparing the sketch beforehand properly, I don't have to think too hard about each detail, and all I really need to do is just to clean up the messy line. I colored in the part of the eyelashes so I don't have to worry about it later in the coloring. Finally, I learned that the lines actually don't have to be perfect, and even from the distance, there are the details that you won't even see on your mobile screen. So I stopped tryharding and instead I just tried to work as fast as possible so I can get over with it. Honestly, the sketches are probably my favorite part to do because you really don't have to worry about it too hard, and all you really have to do is think about the pacing of the animation. In this part, it's more of a brainless cycle where you just have to draw as precisely as possible, but you no longer really think about the animation too hard. It's just drawing many single pictures. That's why I also tried to make this character as animation friendly as possible when designing it by making it mostly out of simple shades like circles and triangles. Of course, she has quite a lot of details when it comes to hair, but since everything is pretty nice and round and there are not too complex shades, it's not too complicated afterwards. And here we have the final line art of the head. You can see that the ears kind of reach over the white circle, so it gives it more dimension. After I had the head finished, I started working on the headphones, Once again using the profile picture as a reference, making a sketch first instead of going straight into the line art because that would be way too complicated. Also, since headphones are more of a electric device than a natural thing like a face, I decided I can make it easier on myself by copying and mirroring each headphone. And I just kept this sketch and I just manipulated it by stretching or squishing the image using the transform tool. I didn't put too much effort into the body and the headphones as I felt like it was more of a secondary detail. At first I was even thinking that the headphones won't be necessary, but I felt like it's quite of a trademark for me at this point. The body doesn't have way too much detail, so I didn't have to work too hard on it. The main focus point is the face. So I just copied and transformed it a bunch of times to have a good layout for the final animation. And here you can see my test with the sketch. I didn't quite like it, it looked quite jagged, so I went back and played around with the position of the headphones and the shape of the body as well to make the animation look a bit smoother. I couldn't believe that this was one of the most complicated parts. The face went really smoothly, and this is where I struggled. I had to go back like 3 or 4 times to actually get the movement right. And here it already looked much cleaner. The hair on the body is a bit jagged, but I didn't really notice it at the sketch and went straight for the line art. So I was really lazy to draw the headphones. I'm not too good at drawing electric stuff. So what I did was I made this single frame as a reference, once again mirroring the headphones. And then I just copied it a bunch of times and modified it based on the sketch for each frame. Since I had some struggle with animating the headphones so they don't look too jagged, I decided that I would first line art the headphones, test how it looks, and then go back to the body. As you can see, the process is fairly repetitive. All you have to do is copy, paste, reposition, and erase the extra parts. And then I had the headphones done and it looked fine, so the next step was to work on the body. I finished the sketch of the headphones and the body and the line art in about 1 day. It only took like 2 or 3 hours as well. I was quite happy with how it turned out until the next day. As you can see, the hair on the chest isn't moving at all, although the body is moving, which made it look kind of weird. So also, once again, I went back to the line art and repositioned the hair on the chest slightly to make it move with the body. Once I was happy with the line art, I started coloring. My color brush can hold 2 colors, so I picked the main 2 colors, which were the primary colors, which is the magnolia white and the salmon pink for the ears, eyebrows, nose and headphones. I created new layers for the colors so it doesn't accidentally happen that I would need to come change it later and it would interfere with the line art. I'm just showing the basic coloring, but obviously it took me longer than just filling it in and going to the next frame. There's actually a lot of deleted content, so this video isn't like 3 hours. I usually had to go back and then edit some small parts that wouldn't get colored. Next, I picked the second two colors, which would be black for the eyes and this kind of grayish pink for the headphone detail, which is basically all the colors that I need. It makes it really simple to animate as the character doesn't have thousands of different colors, and I like the simplicity of it. So finally everything was colored in, and I decided I also wanted to add some shadows and details to make it look more like the actual profile picture. So I added some pink cheeks and some small shadows on the fur and hair and under the headphones. Obviously the profile picture is more detailed and uses a bit different type of shading, but these flat shadows are the simplest to work with when it comes to animation. This process is quite straining as you don't use the fill tool to color it and you really just have to do it all manually. I honestly love the stretched out frame so much. Whenever I saw it, I felt it just looked like Pikachu or some weird Pokemon. If you want to be put into perspective about how long animating takes, this animation is only for like 2 seconds. It's without backgrounds, but it's fully shaded and colored. And this took me around 9 hours to complete. Now imagine also adding backgrounds, and such a single second can take up to 10 hours to complete with more details. That's why it's such a struggle to make these animations while I'm also working a full time. I usually work 10 hours per day and then I get home and also try to work on my animations. It's really exhausting and I only can get around 2 hours of animating in, which really in perspective is just either completing 2 seconds of line art or completing 2 seconds of 3 different sketches. Also, if you wonder what music do I listen to, well, my boyfriend is screaming next to me at his World of Tanks campaign. I usually listen to OSTs like from Minecraft or Pokemon. I also sometimes listen to podcasts when it's some brainless job like coloring and you really don't have to focus too hard. And finally everything was shaded, and all there was left to do was to add some details like the shine to the eye and some highlights and also the dots for the whiskers. The reason why the cat doesn't have actual whiskers and just the dots is because when I tried making it with whiskers, I just felt like the face was a bit too cluttered. I wanted to keep the design really simplistic. You can see that while making the whiskers, I also make them slightly either outstretched or squished based on the frame. And in the static frames, they're just dots. The highlights to the eyes really tie the whole character together and make it feel so much more alive than with the dead black eyes. Finally, I took the purple background and put it on the ring, and then I just exported everything and edited it. And here we have the final process, from the simple sketch to the line art to the color to shadows and details, and finally with the background finished for my YouTube shorts. I hope you enjoyed this video. In my opinion, it turned out great for only taking around 10 hours to complete the animation and the next 5 hours to edit this. So if you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!